everybody. Thanks for your patience. I know things have been a little crazy the last week or two. I've had a lot going on in the background. So I know last week we were late for Talking Out Tuesdays, starting a little late today, but everything is set to go back on track as of next week. Today's topic is addiction, and I do have a special co-host again with me, so I'm going to bring her out again. Thanks for joining me again.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hey. Oh, Reverend Truman. Hey.
Yes. Back to our track days.
I actually found that picture the other day.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, and I was like, I wish I still had that hoodie. I really do.
Oh, you got rid of it?
No, it got like stained up and just it was time to go. I did not take care of my stuff in the younger days, like I do now. So, starting with the topic of addiction, because it's a taboo topic for most. What does addiction mean to you?
I wouldn't say it's taboo. It depending on what it is, it's kind of serious. Because depending on what form that you take, it could be literally anything that you're obsessed with or something that you're using to cope with, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, addiction, I'm trying to pull up the actual addiction because it says like it's a dependency to something. So it doesn't always necessarily pertain to drugs, but it is a technical medical condition, a medical disease involving complex interactions with your brain circuits, your genetics, and people around you and your life experiences. It's a compulsive behavior to something also. So people can be addicted to many things. It doesn't, again, necessarily have to pertain to drugs, but there are some conditions that lead to a higher risk of addiction. There's 4 of them, and that is depression and bipolar, ADHD, borderline personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. Those are the top mental illnesses that usually have an issue with addiction. So moving forward, because that's why we kind of pick these topics, is to let people know that mental health has a lot to do with these things. And you see it a lot in treatment centers where people are battling with addiction, but in reality, it's not really the addiction they're battling, it's the escapism. Because all in all, the vices that we use for... Yeah, you're fine. I was just going to say, all in all, the reason that we use the, let's say, substances or vices that we use in an addictive or compulsive fashion is because we're kind of avoiding something else. So my hair's wet. I just walked in the rain, so I look like a wet cat. So, but moving on, I know that addiction was kind of, especially when it came to drugs, ran heavily in my family. But in reality, it was because mental illness was not talked about. And if it was, it may have been a little bit different. I know I battled with addiction myself for a long time, up until this year, actually, if we're getting real about it. But that's why I kind of wanted to bring this topic to the light. So, and it's really just conversational at this point, because as far as me, usually I give like the little key points and indicators. There's not really much you could say about addiction when it comes to that kind of thing. But there are parts of your brain that are damaged. And I'm going to totally mess this pronunciation up, so bear with me. Mesolimbic dopamine pathway. That's what gets damaged.
Yep.
Yeah. But it is a complex disease, is what people don't realize. It is literally the reward circuit of your brain that is damaged. So when you use things, let's say, like cocaine or crystal meth or marijuana, people don't realize you can actually get addicted to marijuana, but it's not the drug itself you're addicted to. It's the reward system in your brain. You're addicted to the reward that is what you get from smoking. It's not necessarily the chemical itself. Now, when you get to cocaine and crystal meth and all those other things, those are actually addictive on their own. But when it comes to, people always say that, marijuana is not addictive. It's just, it has its benefits and it doesn't. And that's also very true. It's used a lot for medicinal purposes, but it's supposed to be used sparingly. It's not supposed to be an everyday thing. It's not supposed to be in excess. And I think that's the trouble we have with modern day marijuana and the issues we have getting it,
it's also
legalized.
How you use it. Yeah.
It is also how you use it. True. So moving on, the biggest factor I feel in addiction is your genetics, your environment, and your mental health. Genetics have a lot to do with addiction. A lot of people don't realize that. When you come from addicts, it's harder not to be an addict. But a lot of people realize you're not a product of your environment. You make that decision for yourself. It's just easier to fall into addiction when that's all you've seen and known.
Yeah.
So for some people, they choose because they came from parents of addicts never to touch a drug or alcohol at all. Or other people, they choose not to use it often because of the same reason. So, it's not like a try it once and you're automatically addicted, but it can be in some cases, depending on what you're using. So,
yeah.
I've noticed myself, for example, because I worked a lot downtown, that there were a lot of issues with people on drugs because they closed Byberry Mental Institution. And when they did so, they were just kind of like, out into the world you go. And these people had nowhere to go. And, unfortunately, when you're on the street, you're on the street, and they turn to other vices because now they're not getting their mental health meds. So they were using other vices to try to cope.
When was this?
Oh, it was a long time ago, but they're still rampant down there. There's one guy, for example, he's relatively harmless. I've only ever seen him lose his temper one time. And even then it was just kind of like, whatever. What he does, he walks around with no shoes all the time, and he walks with a binky in his mouth. And, sometimes he'll just take the binky out and scream at the top of his lungs and put the binky in and keep walking. There was another lady who had a house and a home, but she would wander the streets instead. And she would just sit outside my job for a while. She would like mess on herself and everything. It's just because they're not mentally there. We don't have enough facilities here in PA to cover the amount of mental illness that is rampant.
No,
there's a lot of that problem is this. People who are addicted to drugs are getting detoxed in mental health facilities because the rehab centers are full. And this is something I'm like wholeheartedly against. Because for me, for example, when I was in the mental health facility, there was someone there who was detoxing and he had no mental health conditions. But because they consider addiction now a mental illness, they bring them there to detox, when in reality, they should be going to a rehab center first to detox and then shifted to the mental health facility for their mental health.
Wow.
Yeah, it causes a lot of issues because it's done backwards. So, for example, when you're bringing them to the mental health facility to detox first, number one, it's an extended period. So now a bed that could have been given to somebody who is just specifically dealing with a mental health condition and needs treatment is like me waiting in a waiting room for 30 to 40 hours for a bed because there's other people there. When in reality, it should have been a detox center first because you can't deal with the root of the issue if there's still an active addiction.
Yes.
So, anything you want to add to this?
No, I'm not familiar with that aspect when it comes to, well, you're in one, so I wouldn't know how that would run. I just know that with these vices, like we already explained it, like you're just avoiding something, and as long as what if you didn't have these addictions? You're avoiding something, and that's plays into why you have these variations of mental illness, because dis-ease is basically dis-ease in your own body because you're not feeling ultimately what it is that you're avoiding a feeling, which ultimately we'll probably get into, which is emotions, which you should negate, even though people want to feel like it's a negative, bad thing. Emotions are just energy in motion, which all you have to do is feel it. But people don't have that knowledge to know that when you feel these emotions that you're avoiding the feeling, it's going to become worse for you, whether it will ultimately becomes disease or mental illness.
Absolutely. But a lot of it, I kind of go back and forth with this because I see it a lot online where they do consider, addiction a mental illness. That's something, honestly, I don't agree with.
I don't agree. Yes. It has to do with dopamine. Because when you have addiction, like a phone addiction, social media, people don't realizing when you're like in that, what I call the zombie state, you're avoiding and you're not being present, and you're avoiding things that you should be really thinking about, because people don't want to be alone with their thoughts, because then it'll come up to all the things that you're not thinking about, which is negative, because people tend to think of negative thoughts when they're alone, unfortunately. So that's what you're avoiding. so the people have these phone addictions because they cannot sit in silence or whatever the case may be. So you get that dopamine hit every time you're on TikTok, whatever it is, because the more that you're on these phones or devices, whatever it is, you're watching movie or TV all the time, and you're avoiding the what I call inner work, whatever it is that you're avoiding, you're gonna become numb. The same
Absolutely.
with I guess again I never had a drug addiction, thank God. So you just numbing yourself from what it is that you're not trying to heal or feel, basically, and that's what you're avoiding, which ultimately everyone is doing nowadays, because I know for a fact everyone's going through it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
see, for me on this end, when I had my addiction, as soon as I came out of the hospital and I kind of got my mental health meds and I got everything back on track and I really started doing that inner work, I noticed I didn't even have an urge or an inkling for what I did before. Because it was never like, I need this drug. It was just more like, I need to not feel what I'm feeling right now instead. So it was just more used for numbing than anything else. So when I came out, I never really had an issue with it because I didn't have anything I was running from anymore. But a lot of that is also, and I that's why I listed those mental health conditions that really play into addiction, because I have 3 of them out of the 4. It's especially with ADHD is the impulsivity. If it's there, it's done, and you don't even think about it, or it's offered to you, you don't think about it because you're impulsive. You don't stop to think of the consequences. You don't stop to think of, the addiction aspect or anything else. You just do, because that's heavily plays into ADHD.
yeah.
And honestly, impulsivity is still something I struggle with. So even on meds, but there's also major parts of your brain and disruptions in 3 areas of your brain that are important in the onset, development, and maintenance of, when it comes to substance abuse. And that's the basal ganglia, the extended amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex. So this is why they consider it a mental condition to be addicted, because when you become addicted to something, and like you said, it triggers the dopamine or the reward system, you now have to rewire your brain, which takes therapy and takes work to fix. So it's not that you can get this condition and then you have it or you're born with it. It's something more like, because you were battling addiction or you were addicted to something, that now you have. Somebody said hello. How you doing? Thanks for tuning in. So it's just more like, now because you had an addiction and because you've done damage to those parts of your brain, now you have to work on rewiring and reworking and refixing all of those parts. And it's not easy.
It's not
it never
easy.
is.
Oh, I have an aunt, and you know who she is. She has a serious phone addiction, which is, it's insane, because the dopamine they get with like seeing somebody liking them on their videos, or if they're, whatever it is, it's hard rewiring to do that, because it's years of this when she has like a phone addiction. Or for me, for a really long time, I was like addicted to shopping therapy. That was like my thing, and I had to rewind my mindset, like, okay, I can't be doing this shit anymore. I have other priorities to be taking care of, like you go to actual therapy or things like that. So I can see it how it could be a mental illness, because I see it in my own eyes with my own family, because people are basically avoiding, and they're just addicted to their vices, basically.
Right.
And they're not using the part of the brain where it should be active, which is like, I don't know. And again, I don't have the terms for it, but all they're doing is just watching something and get their dopamine hit there, instead of actually living life out there, instead of in their real current reality, instead of living through someone else's reality through a screen.
Right. Sorry, I'm looking at the comments that are coming in. Thank you guys for tuning in. This isn't really a party. We're more talking about mental illness today and addiction.
Just
for
bring
future
awareness.
Yeah, for future Talk It Out Tuesdays, you guys are more than welcome to join. Just shoot me a message on my Facebook at CA Cadoubal, and I'll send you the link. But for today, I always do a background screening before I bring people on, and I wouldn't be able to do that while we're live. So I unfortunately can't bring you guys in. And to Silky, who said that we are pretty, thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in. If you have anything to mention about addiction, you're more than welcome to drop it in the comments to join the conversation. and we're happy to bring it up on the screen. But when it comes to escapism, because that is the root of all addiction, we are looking to escape something that we are something that we are either bothered by or triggered by or have gone through. A big part of that is even through therapy, they'll tell you to write it down. For me, it came to, and maybe your aunt could use this. I'm going to ignore that comment because now people are getting rude. She is not Chinese, by the way. Thank you very much.
Wow.
He said, all right, I'll just say it. She said, do you cook authentic Chinese food? No, because she's not Chinese. And that's kind of rude, but not fully.
It's not right to assume.
Right.
Well, I am Chinese. I am full-blown Chinese, even though ethnically I'm also Cambodia.
There you go.
Because my family was born there. I am actually full-blood Chinese. But I
wasn't going to tell him that, Eileen.
Chinese cuisines. I'll admit that. I'm not the greatest cook. So when it comes to authentic Chinese cuisines, I still have to learn.
Well, I wasn't going to tell him that. That's why I said no. But, that's fine.
Look, I don't care. I don't know who these people are. Thank you. So I hope
as a side note, you have two terrible cooks here, guys. Okay, we're not throwing down for nobody in the kitchen. Somebody said they're addicted to us. Great. So every Tuesday, we're live for Talk It Out Tuesdays. Feel free to join.
Every Tuesday.
Right. So getting back on topic, when it comes to the phones and things like that, people.
Porn addiction.
Yeah, phone addiction, porn addiction. Actually, fun fact, porn is as addictive as cocaine. So
yeah, people.
Yeah, that's
guys. If there's any guys tuning in, you guys need to learn semen retention, for real. You guys don't realize that your semen is life force, and every time you're depleting it, that's why you feel like you're addicted, and you have to keep doing it. You gotta realize that that's your strength. So practice that.
It's so funny you said that because on my other show, Hole in the Guide, actually did an episode on semen retention and brought an expert in.
Oh,
so
I'm gonna have to send it to me so I can watch.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna avoid the comments for now because I don't really know who these people are or why they're putting some of those comments in. So we're just gonna ignore that. But can you see the comments on your end?
I see it briefly. I don't think.
If you go up to the comments tab, you can see them too. I don't think you want to, but skipping.
No. Oh, now I see them. I haven't been looking at them. I think
So moving back to addiction, apparently these guys are addicted to putting in inappropriate comments or finding lives to jump on and troll. So beyond that, mental health has a lot to do with even the phone, where we spend all of our time scrolling through social media apps. And it's not always because we're avoiding something. Sometimes it's because we're looking for some kind of positivity, but you don't realize that you're not going to get it with the way that you're looking for it. You're not going to find it on social media. Okay. You're only going to find it if you're looking for self-help things, or maybe you're looking at a show or a clip of a show, and even that should be limited. So your time on the phone should be absolutely limited, especially if you're dealing with symptoms like depression, or like me, borderline personality disorder, anything else like that. So somebody asked about a link to the panel. I do background checks before I bring people on because this is a team of people that I allow to come on my lives. If you would like to send me a message, it's CA Knuble on Facebook, or The Mind That Matters on Facebook, facebook.com/The Mind That Matters. I can definitely look for next week, maybe. But as right now, I do not allow people to join in that are not part of the Mentally Kill Project team, just because of, look at the comments. I don't want any of that on this show.
This is to bring awareness, and we're talking about serious topics here. Of course, there's time to chat with people that are following. We appreciate you watching, but this is just ultimately people to bring awareness and support and help. So but thank you for commenting, guys. But let's be a little respectful.
Yeah. I mean, even if they're not, I'm not putting the comments up, so it doesn't matter. Somebody said, why bother if there's 4 people watching? And I'm talking to you directly right now. It doesn't matter how many people are watching. This is to bring awareness. So there's that. I do this every Tuesday, point blank, period. and people watch after. So it really doesn't matter how many people are watching during the time, as long as one person watching either now or later gets the message from it, then that's really what matters.
Yeah, that's our goal here.
Right. I have another podcast that has a lot of weekly listeners. So when it comes to getting attention, it's not really for that. This is just to bring awareness. And I just launched this in October. So there's not really a lot of people on here to begin with. It
Not
just
yet.
got launched. Yeah. So it's not really a big deal. But I mean, you guys can say what you want to. I don't really care. You're not really relevant to me. I've never even heard of you. So, and I doubt I will ever again. So if it's that big of a deal to you, you're welcome to stop watching at any time. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of ignore the comments. I'm not even going to keep the comments tab open anymore. So yeah, we can move on from there. I just literally closed it out.
Okay. I mean, you could just not read the comments because people are just going to be like that. But we appreciate your support, whoever's here.
Yeah, well, I wanted to address it because I'm sure a lot of people have thought that, like, if there's not a lot of subscribers or not a lot of followers, why bother doing something? And we all started somewhere, you know. There's
not be obnoxious people.
Right. There's plenty of people that started with no subs and now they have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, you know, and they all started with maybe 17. So it is what it is. We don't really do this to get followers or subscribers. We do it to spread information. So beyond that, moving back to addiction, we tend to jump on social media or jump into, you know, grabbing something from a dealer or jump into grabbing a bottle, you know, because alcoholism is very serious, especially when it comes to addiction. And that's probably one of the most well known. It's most well known only because it's legal. It's promoted constantly. You see it on TV, advertisements, on the radio, at parties. You know, is it a party if there's no alcohol there? To most people, the answer would be no. You know, but it's also, most people don't realize that that is an addiction. You know, if you need a beer after work to calm down, or, you know, you need a shot and a beer and you go to the local bar after you're working your 9 to 5, that's a problem. That means that without that shot and a beer, you can't relax. You can't move on with your day or with your life or whatever the case may be. So I think that's mostly the biggest issue that we have. You know, second being obviously marijuana, now that it's becoming more legalized. They don't limit it like they should. Because I know people who have medical marijuana cards, they tell you can only get a certain amount per month. But I feel like even that amount is still excessive, because now you're having people rely on this as a way to cope.
With marijuana, whether you know this or not, it should be used medicinally, but it should not be smoked. People get that wrong because they class it as like a class 1 drug when it shouldn't be. But it's because it's being smoked or even laced when it should be used that way. Essentially, marijuana is a plant and it should be used whether eaten or drinking or as an oil to like topically or whatever it is for medicinal uses, but it should not be smoked. That's where people get addicted. That's why it's one of the addictions, basically.
Well, I feel like when it comes to like anything you inhale, I think that makes it easier to get addicted because, like, let's take cigarettes, for example. Yes, cigarettes are addictive. I'm a smoker myself. But even when I have my periods where I quit, it's more of like that after you eat the smoke or the social aspect of it. You know, you feel like you can't go outside and stand with the smokers because you're not one. And that's not necessarily true. You still can go outside, but then you'll be tempted. You know, so that's the issue, but it's the social aspect. You know, everybody goes out to have a cigarette, or you meet friends outside at the bar when you go outside and things like that. So it's more of a social aspect for some things, especially when it comes to marijuana as well. It is a social thing, kind of sit around with your friends and smoke, or, you know, a lot of people do that is what I'm saying. It's just more of like the social aspect of things that bring it more popular, make it more popular, and make it harder to quit.
It is. But I think what it is like, and again, probably at the end of this, when we talk about this, I can suggest things that people can, like, alternatives on way to relax, not be addicted. I think the act of breathing in, right? When you're smoking that, or cigarettes, I never smoked one. The feeling, I don't know what kind of feeling you get with cigarette smoking. I never had one. I smoked like a Black and Mild before. But it's the act of breathing in, right? So people, you got to realize like how much, now I call it breath work, but how much you can just take a breath in after you're triggered. If you want to relax and hold your breath, you can shift your mood easily. and that helps a lot. So then you don't have to go to these vices to relax. Like breath work helps a lot, which whether it's be breathing deep in like 5 seconds and exhaling, or breathing in and holding it as long as you can and then exhaling it and repeating after many times. Because if everybody could practice breathing in when they're triggered, or if they're like in a mood where they want to shift their mood, people will be so much more relaxed and not being addicted to these things that they have to go to for feeling something else.
Right. Well, especially when it comes to cigarettes. Like for me, when I started smoking cigarettes, it was a long, long time ago. It was because somebody else was smoking and we wanted to try it. And then it was just like from there, I just kept continuing with it. You know, at that time, it was more of a social thing for me. You know,
Yeah.
everybody else is smoking, so I'm going to smoke.
Mhm.
And then after that, it was like not having one, you get mood swings, you get, you know, those side effects that come with, you know, not smoking anymore.
Yeah.
You know, smoking curbs your hunger. So when you quit, now you're eating more, things like that.
Oh yeah,
It
eating is
also,
an addiction too.
eating is also an
People
addiction.
don't
As what else was
realize
going to
that
say.
eating, most people eat out of pleasure. So you realize, what I've learned is you don't have to eat as much as you need to, as long as you have the nutritional value. And people are not realizing people eat out of addiction, also emotional eating. That's an addiction, because then you are avoiding something, or this is their vice. My ex had a problem, and like he ultimately felt like either insecure, but then he counteracts the work he does to like really work out and do really well with the physique that he wants, but then returns to emotional eating, because eating, whether you know that, a lot of these foods are addictive, because there's some things in there that are addictive that is almost just like sugar. Sugar is like the same effect as cocaine. It's a freaking drug. People don't realize it, and they get addicted, so they resort to emotional eating because it's pleasurable. It makes you feel good, and it tastes good, and that's another addiction too. People don't realize we eat out of desire, pleasure, really. But yeah, guys, or my people out there, food is an addiction, whether you know it or not. Like a lot of these foods that we're eating, whether it's detrimental to our body, we should be eating. Be mindful, of course. Have a balance. Of course, you want to eat something with
Sorry.
like a dessert or ice cream or whatever it is. But when it comes to emotional eating, you have to look at, okay, when you come to these vices that you ultimately get addicted to, if you can pause for a moment and look back and be like, okay, what am I avoiding that I have to return to these things where I'm either emotionally eating, or I'm being addicted to watching porn, or like I have to go drink alcohol. Like, what are you avoiding? Because that's the root of what it is that you're avoiding that could eventually become a mental illness or disease. Because people, you don't realize, when you don't start what I would like to call healing, if you're not healing the aspect of things that you're avoiding, the emotions that you're bottling up, later down the line, as you get older, that's going to become a serious disease, whether it be dementia, Alzheimer's, I don't know all the other
It's really just
diseases
them
that could
too.
happen
It's
when
really
you're
just them too.
older.
Memory loss. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because of disease. That if you don't do it and you don't catch yourself, again, it's because of you have to be conscious and aware of it. If you don't do that healing early on, you pass it on to your kids, and ultimately it'll become a worse disease later on. And I would never want to put that on my kid, to be to the point where I'm losing my mind or forget who I am. And there's a spiritual aspect to this as well, but
We'll
it's
get into
these things
that.
that you don't really think about, talk about, but you don't want to worsen your health later down the line for things that you're avoiding. That's
So
basically what I'm saying.
here's a big part of that too. What a lot of people don't realize about, let's say, marijuana, for example, marijuana causes memory loss. And when you're doing things that cause memory loss already, when you go later down the line and you start losing your memory, which happens to all of us as we get older, even if you don't have dementia or Alzheimer's, you're now exacerbating that because you're not doing any kind of brain work or, you know, mental work to try to strengthen that before you get to that stage of your life. People use marijuana just because it's there. People use marijuana just because your friends are using it. And to be honest, I smoked a really long time until I realized that by smoking, I was not I was clouding my brain. It wasn't until I stopped smoking that I realized how clouded my brain was when I was smoking. And even if I hadn't smoked that much, it took like days for me to realize, how to uncloud my brain after that, even when I only smoked like once in a while. It was like I'd smoke and I'd feel great, and that's awesome. It's good to have, a way to relax, but at the same time, it takes several days for your brain to kind of unfog after that. And I see it a lot, especially with, let's say, comedians, because I do that a lot. And it's a big social aspect when it comes to comedy. And it's not to say they can't be functional. It's not to say they can't do what they have to do when you get on stage, especially when it comes to comedy. But I've noticed for myself that when I'm not smoking, I'm a lot faster. It's a lot clearer, and it's a lot easier for me to remember my jokes, instead of going just off the top, which I can do too.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends, she is an avid smoker. She smokes all the time, and she can't eat unless she smokes, because she has smoked for such a long period of time that when she doesn't smoke, she's not hungry. She has to smoke to be hungry. She has to smoke to eat food. So it can be really bad to smoke for a long period of time.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Because smoking gives you the munchies,
That's true.
Yeah. It's a big thing that people fight over. I'm sure there's people that will disagree with this, and that's fine. Go read the research about it. Do your research about anything. Even marijuana, do your research. A lot of people just smoke just to smoke, but are you researching what you're smoking? No. And I'm not talking about every bag you get from your guy down the street. No. But marijuana as a whole, there are plenty of medicinal qualities, like we said. But like you said, smoking it was not its intended purpose. You're supposed to ingest it, edibles, tea, things like that. That's how you were supposed to medicinally use marijuana. Nobody's using it that way. Anything you smoke will become addictive because you're addicted to the aspect of smoking. For cigarettes, is lifting the cigarette to your mouth to smoke. And then once you're smoking for a long time, now you're addicted because of the nicotine that's in the cigarettes. Now you are actively addicted, and now you get those side effects when you try to quit, just like any other drug you try to detox from. Because cigarettes, I could classify those as a drug too, if we're going down that route, because it's something that you get actively addicted to. Yeah. So, other than that, I really don't know what else to say about addiction, other than I've seen it a lot. I've been an addict myself. So yes, I am qualified to talk about these things.
Yeah.
But
and you realize, like, when people get into these big hardcore drugs, especially like heroin, that's one of the most addictive, right?
I'm not sure.
When
it comes to the bigger name drugs, I don't know much about them.
For anyone who knows and you don't know, like, if someone, please be aware of conscious. If someone talks to you about being depressed, take it seriously. This is why Christy does this, and I love it, and I love to be. I'm glad that I'm part of this, because I want to bring awareness. Because way back when my son was younger, his father, like, he reached out, and I didn't know, like, I'm sure he talked to I've just found out later on, like, he also reached out to his brother about it. Like, he told me that he was depressed, and I didn't know what to talk about, because, like, we didn't have that information out there on how to support someone who was depressed, because you yourself wasn't depressed or didn't realize what depression was, and there's different levels to it. Okay, so we didn't know how to support someone like that. And same thing with my ex. When he was depressed, I didn't know how to support him because I didn't know what he's going through. Again, he's a man, and mans go through different things than women. So they don't have that support system either, because that's why men is the majority of suicide. It's so sad. So ultimately, we're doing this to bring awareness, but, like, if you know someone who's being addictive or who's extremely depressed and they talk to you about it, be aware of it. That's their way of saying they're reaching out for help. And this is why Christy made this. This is why we're doing these talks, to make awareness, so we can support people and have that information. So when, ultimately, when her project is finished, her website, we're going to have all that. The information where you can learn about it, so you can be supportive of someone who's your family or friend or somebody who's reached out and looking for that help, and how you can be supportive and understand it instead of going by the stereotypes of what that is. Because there's levels to depression, and there's levels to other mental illnesses. I don't like using the word disability or illness. Okay, it's just basically emotions that are trapped and you're not dealing with. It becomes this mental thing. It is. Okay. I don't like using those words, but that's ultimately what it is. Because if I had that information. If I had known, I would have ultimately could have probably saved his life, because he turned into addiction, which is he had smoked heroin, and he was smoking marijuana, and then also other drugs that ultimately, unfortunately, led to his early death.
Yeah.
So we're just bringing awareness, and ultimately, hopefully, we can have this whenever Christy, and I'm going to help her too, so we can have this project completed and have this information on her website, and we're going to spread it out there so that way, because everyone I know for a fact is going through it. Everyone has some kind of level of depression or whatever mental disease is out there. So ultimately, our ultimate goal is to help people, bring awareness so they can support people who need this help or healing. I'm the biggest advocate for healing. That's because I've been through it for the past 2 months. Okay. But if you even just know someone who is reaching out for help, take it seriously, because you ultimately could save a life.
Yeah. And you know what? I've had something similar happen to me, actually. I had somebody that I was dating for a while, and we kind of got into a little bit of an argument, and I was toxic at the time. I don't do this now, but they had called me and, was trying to talk to me, and it was a man, and I was just like, dude, just leave me alone. Like, I'm not happy with you right now. Don't fucking call me. And they died that night. They'd done drugs. They'd never done drugs before in their life. They did drugs that night because they were feeling it, and they passed the same night. First time. Sometimes it only takes once, people. So keep that in mind. It doesn't matter what it is. Sometimes it only takes one time for it to be the last time. So if you're feeling, sad or depressed, or you need someone to talk to, again, on Facebook, my messenger is backed by the suicide hotline. So there are people watching the messenger, just so you guys are aware. So if you feel you need somebody, please reach out. It never hurts to reach out. And when it comes to reaching out, please remember that not everybody is capable or emotionally capable of helping you in that moment. And that doesn't mean you should give up. That means you should reach out to sources that are always capable of helping you, such as the suicide hotline. Yes. And I know when people hear that, they hear oh, and I get it, because when I was in my suicide ideation stage, I didn't want to talk to them either. Even when I tried and made an attempt on my life, I didn't call anybody, because it's hard in those moments. But it's up to us to recognize the signs. And this is part of the reason I have this and why I go over different topics on Tuesday, because most people don't realize something as simple as getting ghosted to a borderline can lead to suicide. Something as simple as not getting a text responded to when you feel you needed somebody can lead to suicide. So there are many different mental health conditions that, yes, it's not our responsibility to help in those moments, but it is our responsibility to recognize the signs in our friends, in our family, in our loved ones, or even online. If you see someone struggling online, reach out and just say, hey, I don't know you. I know you're not feeling that great, but guess what? Life gets better. Or send something funny, or send something encouraging. Because even if you may not save that person, even if you may not turn their day around, you did something. And that's the biggest problem that we have as a society. We're selfish. We don't care about other people or their feelings. That's why the suicide rate is so high, because we're so easy to be toxic or manipulative or brush off other people, especially when it comes to men. That's why suicide rate in men is so high. Men don't talk about emotions. Why don't they talk about emotions? Because when they try, they're shut down.
Or they were taught to not talk about emotions and bottle it up, which is extremely toxic.
That's right. So to end this, because we are at the 45-minute mark, if you see something, say something. If you're having trouble, you're battling addiction, please reach out. There are many different avenues you can take. You don't necessarily have to go to a rehab center to start. I always say therapy is a great place to start. But if you are on something a little more serious and a little more addicting, you absolutely should go to a rehab center. But you can only go if you want to be better. It's not going to do anything for you if you go and you have no intentions of healing or growing or moving away from the substance or drink or whatever you're using as a vice. So
you have to initially consciously and initiate your own healing. If you do want to get better, it's your decision. But there are people out there who want to help you, and there are so many resources that eventually will have available. I'm sure she has that information on her website as well for the Mitzi Kill.
Yep.
But yeah, just reach out. Don't be. And our next topic will be talk about shame. So don't be ashamed, because ultimately everyone needs help. Everyone needs help, and you
Yep.
should not be ashamed of that. And
That's
whether you
right.
need to call the hotline or not, or whether you need to go rehab and detox, whatever it is, reach out for help. There are people who want to help you, and ultimately you can be saved. Like, just know that there will be dark times, but there is a light at the tunnel if you want it. Okay.
That's right. That's
So,
right. And again, if you see something online that kind of rubs you the wrong way and somebody that you post, doesn't matter if you're friends or not, reach out. Sometimes when people post things, especially when they start posting things online, yes, it is for attention. It's because they feel something and they're not getting help or attention or support in their everyday life. So they turn to social media, whether it is to create a long rant online or just to say something, or they post something. If you see something,
it's
say
a cry for
something.
help. Yeah.
Yes, it is a cry for help, not just attention. It is a cry for help. So, again, if you see it in your everyday life, in your friends, in your family, make sure you let them know that support is there. Even if you don't want to step in, because I totally understand that too. Sometimes we just don't want to get involved with the mess, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there is something wrong with not saying anything. Even if it's just to say, hey, I know you're going through it. I'm sorry to hear it, but there is help out there. Send them some help. Send them the page, send them whatever you need to, but make sure you send something, say something, even if it's just, I'm
Or
here for you.
you could just listen. I trust me, I already had this talk with my son. It's not easy talking about emotions because it's been so stigmatized. Even though it's ultimately going to help someone, talking about emotions is not easy, but you could be just a listening ear for somebody to vent to because they need someone to talk to. Be that person or be that guy. Guys, listen, okay? Don't be a dick to your friend who is a dude, or if you're, don't be afraid, okay? Don't be a bitch and be like, oh, I don't want to talk about emotions. Do it, okay? It'll help you at the end of the day. Once you release that, just talk about it. There are people who will listen. If they're not, then they're not your friend. They're not your support system.
That's true. It's very true. So, with that being said, I'm going to end it for today. Thank you again for joining me on this Talk It Out Tuesday. And for anybody watching, I am fine tuning the website. I've been working on it off and on all day, but I have been very sick. So, I have not gotten much done this week, but I am working on it right now. It should be done by tonight. I do have a page where I listed all of the different places that you could go for help nationwide. So that is actually getting published tonight. Also with the Meet the Team to start, because I did get a couple people's bios and headshots in, just waiting for the rest. So that page won't be posted yet, but soon you will be able to meet the whole team. Like I said, I'm kind of reworking the whole website, but there are interviews that you guys can check out. There is one from Timothy Lodgen about addiction. Very inspirational person, very inspirational man. Check it out. It just dropped on Friday. There will be another one dropping tonight, later before 12. So check that out as well. And we will see you guys next week for our shame topic.
So we will see you next Tuesday.
Yep. But not like the word, like the abbreviation, like see you next Tuesday. That's why I hate saying see you next Tuesday, because that's the first thing I think of, because I am immature, ladies and gentlemen. But we will catch you next Tuesday on the next Talk It Out Tuesday. See ya.
Bye.